G'day. Ryan here. Okay, so about time I did another video, I was thinking. So a very quick shout out to Brandon Thomas at Expanding Reality podcast, who's organising a panel, roundtable, this thing. So yeah, for me that's 1 p.m. Saturday or something. I'm living in the future here. It's the next day for me, dudes. Just seeing what's going to happen before you dudes do. Yeah, so check that out. And okay, cool, excellent. Now, oh yeah, new picture that I did that I've got as my thumbnail for my channel at the moment, which I started to copy a photo of what I thought was a Majeena, and then I sort of, because it's been so long since I've done any drawings, I was sort of out of practice and I couldn't remember how to do it. And I was thinking, I'm sure I used to be better at this, but I'd sort of developed skills in a very short space of time, and then I haven't done it again for months. And so I went to go and do it, and I'm like, I should be able to. Oh no, I can't do it anymore. It's all gone. So I was having trouble. Like, I was gonna copy a certain photo, and I was trying to do it, and I couldn't. And then I thought, fuck this shit. And I just zoned out and just did an image from memory instead. Just some dude with a we've got here the nose piece without goggles, without the breathing device that filters the air, because they're allergic to a lot of shit. Filter out dust and particles, pollen, blah blah blah. And then up here, the extension up over the helmet, and that whole thing can come off. Extension to resonate, amplify sounds, and all that kind of jazz. Anyway, okay, sweet. What's going on?
Oh yeah, and I'm having myself a bevy, yeah. Bit of a sip. Just a quiet one, yeah. I started filming as before, and fucking storm came in, and fucking lightning. And my kids were going fucking dropo out there, and I couldn't fucking hear myself think. So I shut that cunt down, and I just went, fuck that.
And now this is take 2. Cool. Okay, what are we doing? Oh yeah, Credo. I'll just quickly talk about Credo Matwa, the Zulu dude, South African dude. It's well known in the UFO world because David Icke courted him and made a documentary interviewing him and things like that. And, lots of people think that Credo Matwa is full of shit. And that he pulled shit out of his ass and tried to pass it off as Zulu law. I think it's fairly safe to say that he's one of those people that, from just watching him being interviewed and stuff like that, that he seems to be this kind of person that seems to be like, when he's telling a story, it's a dynamic situation, and he himself is paying close attention to the responses of his audience and tinkering with his story to further titillate them and things like that. That he's got the gift of the gab. And people have said that, you know, with David Icke, he fed him a bit of bullshit. And in other ways, when he's talked about different kinds of non-human beings in South African Zulu law, that you can't be quite sure whether it's genuine Zulu beliefs or whether he's fabricating things, or it's based on some kind of germ of truth, but he's shifting and twisting depending on how his audience is reacting. So if you've got a Western audience, he's sort of feeding you what you want to hear and all that kind of crap, you know. Having said that, and it may be a coincidence, but what he says about a race of beings called them, and he spells it like this, which is not overly familiar to look at, you know. Doesn't really mean much, but when I hear him pronounce it, it sounds it's like Mantidan, Mantidane or Mantidan, and it sounds the way he pronounces it catches my ear, very similar to Majeena. But I'll put a link to a video of him talking about the Mantidan, future human, what he thinks of future human race, pale beings that shag Zulu people and upset with us about how we're fucking up the planet and all this kind of stuff. And he himself has been abducted by it, etc., and so on. Now, I was familiar with the dude a bit from Peter Curry, like Bill Chalker, the Australian researcher, wrote the book Hair of the Alien, which is principally about the case of Peter Curry. Australian experiencer, lifelong experiencer of Majeena contact. But I think there's a chapter on Credo Matwa, and he talks a bit about his experiences in that. And so I was familiar with him years ago when I was first coming across the Peter Curry case, experiencing it there. But the word meant nothing to me, the way it's spelt and things. More recently, being more familiar with the Majeena word for themselves, I was starting to think, and there's a gentleman that was contacting me through email and was saying you should check Credo Matwa out just recently, and I was like, I sort of remember that, but hadn't really paid much attention to him. Anyway, yeah, Credo Matwa says these beings are, you know, subterranean dwelling, future human pale beings. He likens them to the Greys from, you know, UFO lore, Western UFO lore. Well, Grey, all the 4 races that exist have been called Greys at different times. That could apply to anyone or anything. Unfortunately, that's not, that particular word means nothing, because it's overused and applied to all 4 races. So at different times. But yeah, he says 3 to 3.5 foot tall. So that would be teenage Majeena. Anyway, so I'll put a link to a video. You dudes could check that out, and it may be a coincidence, and he may not be talking about the same dudes, but that's pretty full on coincidence if it's a coincidence. It seems as though he's never seen or heard of. Actually, he has. Hold on a sec. Here's one I prepared earlier. Hold on, we'll just go down to John Mack, Passport of the Cosmos. He, I just got this. I just read this last. Well, I didn't read the whole book, but I read parts of it last week. Somehow I'd gone through the last 10 years or so avoiding John Mack's Passport to the Cosmos book. I'm not quite sure why. I'd sort of heard about it and things like that, but I'd never gotten a copy. I've got a digital copy here. So, where is it? Anyway, what does he say? Come on, where's Credo? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. He speaking of the Mantenan, or something he calls them. And here's a sketch he did that looks to me like a medic with a skull cap on covering hair or a helmet and dark lenses over the eyes. Their minds leak into your mind, he said. Their ideals are able to become ours. It is they, sir, who have instilled into our minds at this time in human history a consciousness of the oneness of the whole world. Okay. So I'll just cruise down, though, because he talks about... Okay. Talks about tall Matina. And I'm thinking, well, beings like Matina, but taller. Well, that's the adults. Where he said they came down and helped Zulu people at one stage that were starving. Taught them how to cook a certain root that would normally be poisonous so that they could survive. He said that they do negative things, they do positive things. That he has... the gentleman's passed away now. Rest in peace. But he said that they... he believes they taught him a lot of... they educated him in a lot of ways and advanced his understandings about mathematics and science and history and all that kind of stuff without him having to research it. This is what he says. You know, if it is the Majeena, I'd believe that. I don't know what the fuck it is at the moment. But anyway, he says they're deeply pissed off with us for ruining the Earth and that he thinks they're future humans and not aliens because they're seen by Zulus not wearing any protective gear sometimes, without masks, without gloves and things like that. So that's deeply interesting. And the way he has them, the way he sort of describes them as being three-dimensional, in that they're not just good or they're not just evil. He talks about the Mantinan as being complex, complicated, you know. So this is something that makes me treat what he has to say more seriously as well, because that's exactly right, you know. Just as Homo sapiens are. They've got agendas going on all over the place. They can be incredibly compassionate. They can be incredibly cruel. This is Homo sapiens I'm talking about. And that's equally applicable to Homo Orionis, or the Majeena. Now, as for Majeena, I've been having interactions with the dudes lately where they've been talking to me in their language and teaching me shit. This is excellent, because I just did an interview like a week ago or something like that, where I was talking about their language and how I thought it always their nouns and their words always end in vowels. After I'd done that interview, they set me straight and expressed different things to me. Now, I'm going to put a lot of this kind of stuff in my book, and I don't want to give too much away, otherwise there's no real point in me writing the book, I suppose. But their planet, Ling is a planet, Linga. Their planet is called Mana, and they are Manajina, people of Mana. And then the brown ones from Zeta Reticula are from Sebe, and there's Sebetjina. And so Manajina means people of Mana. So it shouldn't be just Majina, it should be Manajina. So I've lost a consonant in there. But I don't I don't know whether I can be bothered going back. Like, they'd assured me that that was a close enough pronunciation earlier on. I don't know if I want to go back and change all the spellings I've done through other videos and shit like that. So Mana is the name of an Earth-like planet that they inhabited, orbiting uh, Epsilon Orionis, the middle star of Orion's belt. And they've given me the names of the 3 stars in their language, which I'm not going to fucking give at the moment. I'm just going to sit on this shit for now. A, because I might be wrong, and this is tentative at best at the moment, really. And B, I'm just going to sit on that shit. I'm the kind of person who normally fucking just tells people everything, but I'm going to hold these cards close to my chest. Just with this linguistic stuff, I'm going to, because I really want to work this stuff and make sure I've got shit right. Having said that, I'll just piss this off because I can't see myself. I'm not sure what the fuck I'm doing. Okay, there you go. I was gonna say yes, of the language. Okay, so I'll leave that shit. The names of the 3 stars in Orion's belt, and the name of the planet that they are from, orbiting the middle star in Orion's belt, Mana. Okay, cool. So, okay, that'll do for that stuff. Now, what the fuck else was I going to talk about? Shit, man. Oh, here we go. Okay, what I'll do is I'll powder my nose. Time for immediate powdering. Yeah, so what I was saying is, when I said they set me straight, is that there are lots of words in their language that don't end in a vowel. I was sort of thinking they had to be couplets, like in Japanese or Korean, with a consonant and a vowel. And no, quite often yes, but not always necessarily. And there's some basic grammatical structure I'm coming to be aware of as they're expressing different sentences to me, and the meanings along with the meanings, and I'm comparing that to different expressions they've said to me and matching words and trying to work out some of the structure and things like that. So this shit's happening, which is what I was hoping for, wishing for, and I was thinking surely that's a foregone conclusion that they're going to help me with this, because that is incredibly important to me. Their linguistics is, to become fluent in their natural language. If there are sounds in their natural language that I cannot reproduce, I would at least, or cannot properly hear, I would at least like to be able to approximate it. In the sense that, Chinese speakers of Mandarin or Cantonese, especially Mandarin, I think, because they're used to look more used to hearing foreigners trying to learn it, whereas Cantonese not so much, I suppose, because far less people try to learn Cantonese. So I shouldn't have mentioned Cantonese. Mandarin. With Mandarin, Mandarin speakers are used to hearing non-Chinese speakers trying to replicate the tones and not getting it right. And if you, from what I've heard, and my brief stint at one stage there, trying to learn Mandarin for a few months, checking it out and sort of going, meh. Many years ago. I've still got all the fucking books as well. But they to I think there's 4 different tones in Mandarin, but the idea that hearing a Westerner using only 2 tones, I can't remember how many tones there are in Mandarin, less than Cantonese anyway, but if you hear an approximation and you know that it's a Westerner and they're trying to speak Mandarin, and you make an allowance for them not quite getting it right, and the tones allowing for them blurring a couple of tones together here and there, and all that kind of stuff that they'll understand. And I'm thinking, anyway, because they're sort of taking into consideration that the person's not tuned in, and it's an alien system to them, because native English speakers aren't used to tonal languages, blah blah blah. But with the Majeena, if there's aspects of the language that I cannot reproduce or cannot hear, I would at least like to be able to learn to read and write in it, and come to some kind of agreement with them, of some kind of compromise where I can substitute certain sounds that I can make for the ones that I can't, and that they can become used to the idea of how I speak their language. Anyway, so this shit's happening. This shit's gonna happen. I was hoping it was gonna happen. I was presuming it would, and now it is starting to happen in a dramatic kind of way. Okay, cool, right? Okay. Now, okay, cool. Yeah, so I listened to Dickie Dolan being interviewed on Higher Side Chats, with by. Well, this is embarrassing. I can't remember his name. It's Jeff, isn't it? Jeffrey. I'll put his name here. Hold on a sec.
I'll look up his name. I owe the bloke that much. Fuck. He got me on his show. Lovely chap.
Well, that's embarrassing. Greg Carwood. Of course it is. Of course that's his name. Yeah. Dickie Dolan was on there. I listened to Dickie Dolan. Richard Dolan, man himself. Yeah, and that was cool. I was pleasantly surprised with Richard Dolan, because I'm a real fan of Richard Dolan up until sort of kind of recently. I think it has something to do with it's not his fault. It's the fault of the people who he associates with, I'm sure, because when you rub up against different kinds of people, you spend time with them, you start to be drawn into their world and their worldview and things like that. Richard Dolan, I have sung the praises of the Dickie Dolan for a long time. How he added extra layers of academic integrity to ufology. Out there speaking, adding sophistication to the discipline, if we can call it a discipline, and just bringing some good shit to it. The man's on the move. Everyone changes. I like the dude. I've said that before. I'll say it again. Richard. But also, I think from the way he speaks now, it seems as though he has been associating with, and this is my opinion, people that are involved with, how can we phrase this? Kind of like perhaps a conservative US quasi-esoteric alternative science kind of mystical esoteric Christian vibe. Like I get that kind of, like alternatives to germ theory kind of vibe, that kind of thing. A bit of Rudolph Steiner mixed into the stuff. But I've been researching Rudolf Steiner because of the Araman. Like I made a video when I knew next to nothing about Rudolf Steiner's form of esotericism, Western esotericism, Christian esotericism. I suppose, well, I don't know if you'd really say it's Christian, other than he promotes the belief in the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ, but according to a lot of Christians, that it's probably not Christian. It's a much nicer way of seeing the world than I think a lot of people that suggest it isn't Christianity. There's something quite, as I'm looking into the cosmology and learning about it and researching, and it's kind of as a subject, because of the art, the sculpture of Araman. Araman's bust, Araman's head, looking. I would have thought a lot like a Majeena elder with the long chin. That same image, though, sometimes you see it front on, and I sort of think maybe it looks less like a Majeena, but when you see it sort of at that angle, looks a bit like that. And reading up on interesting sort of triad belief of a triad of Lucifer on one end and Ahriman on the other, and the Christ in the middle, and rather than having a duality, it's this kind of triad system or a trinity, not in the more traditional sense of the Holy Trinity in Christianity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, but but it's syncretic anyway. I recommend people look at Rudolf Steiner's interesting attempt, in my opinion, to turn theosophy, Madame Blavatsky's theosophy. I don't know if people know what the fuck I'm talking about, but anyway, I've just been researching all this kind of shit recently, so it's. But anyway, he invented a religious system that, rather than to sort of combat and not combat, that's too strong a word, but to as an alternative to the heavily Eastern mystical movement and wave that was coming in with the Theosophical Society, which was largely based on kind of syncretized amalgamation of sort of pseudo Eastern mystical forms, and Steiner was like, hold on a sec, but Europe needs a Western religious system, something similar to theosophy, but not. We've got to get Christ back into the equation, and so he invented a new religion, really, and it's just incredibly complex. It's incredibly impressive. The guy's a genius. Whether or not he actually believed it, I suspect not. I think he was, Tolkien talks, J.R.R. Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff, but he was, open about how he was inventing a mythology for England. Well, Rudolf Steiner invented a spiritual system for Europe, basing it was eclectic, basing it on all these different kinds of and integrating all these different ideas into one spiritual system, which is impressively, you know, it is, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Like it's although I think it's a figurative way of seeing the world. In some ways, in a lot of ways, it's a nice way of seeing the world. It is internally consistent, and incredibly complex. And he was, a polymath. This guy, he just drew from all over the place. He was incredibly capable of this, that, and the other. And I think that he was a Majeena experiencer as well. Um, in my opinion, he was a Majeena experiencer, and they had approached him, and he didn't like what they had to tell him. Now, whether he was conscious of this or not, it's hard to say. But it seems to me as though he portrayed the Majeena as being the villains in his own cosmology that he invented later on. Like the Majeena approached him about their ideas, um, and he couldn't handle ideas like there not being an atomic soul and things like that, you know. And so he rebelled against it and formulated, fabricated, manufactured this intricate religious system, which is just a wonderful thing to read. Like I've been reading lots of Steiner's books and things like that. I don't believe a fucking word of it, but it's just a wonderful exercise, an intellectual exercise. And I think if there has to be a kind of Christianity, best something like it. Looking at this as a from perspective of cultural relativism, like yeah, that's far superior, and people who adopt that as a worldview and as a cosmology and as a way of seeing the world and interpreting the world and as a cultural um, system, um, that will make far more compassionate people than a lot of the forms of Christianity that are around at the moment. And that's cool, you know. But there it is. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm wandering off task, but I wandered off from the Dickie Dolan. Yeah. So Rudolph Steiner uh, formulated this kind of Christian esotericism, trying to bring Christ back into what had been coming out of the East. Um, like in theosophy. Um, mystical ideas that were Eastern and so foreign to him, and he wanted to embrace Christ, and that was where he was from, and that was what he knew, and he was going to somehow rationalize and reinterpret the Bible, especially the New Testament. And so he claimed to be a clairvoyant, and that he was seeing into the essence of reality, and he knew this and that, blah blah blah. So many people believe in the literal truth of what he's saying. There's this lovely channel called by a guy. He's passed away, rest in peace, Cora Bursell. I really love listening to that dude. And a lot of his ideas, like his economic and political ideas and his nutritional ideas and things like that, really coincide with my own. I'll put links to that. There's another guy as well. It's just wonderfully. He's an anthroposophist. I find it very difficult to say that word. Too many syllables. He this guy Douglas Gabriel. I suggest people watch his videos because it's just wonderful stuff. This guy has sort of taken in everything Steiner said, and I think he's one of the few people that's sort of like moving out with it as well. And he's also reintegrating the feminine into the divine more than like reading into what Steiner was saying and taking it further. And talks about the divine feminine trinity, which reminds, and when he talks about it, it reminds me of Wicca and some of those ideas of the mother, maiden, and crone, but he calls it something else: the mother, the daughter, and the Holy Sophia, or something like that. But anyway, Sophia, wisdom, the goddess, reintegrated into it. Good stuff. I'll put links to these dudes' channels. People might be interested. But anyway, I was talking about Dickie Dolan, and I suspect that some of these kinds of ideas from some of the Freemason ideas, Hermetic ideas, Rudolph Steiner's reinterpretation of this kind of stuff, Rosicrucian, European esotericism, reinterpretations of the Hermetic shit and all that kind of stuff. That he's involving himself with people that are into that kind of stuff, and it's leaving a bit of a smell on him, and it's like, oh well, whatever he has to do. I suspect as well that he's sort of leaving, even though he'll always have a foot in the UFO world. I noticed the video he made recently. He was talking about he said something like, people may know me from ufology, and I also have things in ufology. I also have an interest in ufology, and I've said this and that. And I was sort of like, hold on a sec, dude. People are watching your channel, aren't they into ufology? I think from the way he's talking, I suspect that the man has ambitions to move beyond ufology again, even though I'm sure he'll always have a soft spot for ufology. The UFO scene, whatever the fuck you want to call it. UFO research, ET research. And that but nonetheless, he has ambitions and ideas to sort of move out into more of a general political as influencer, to be more of a commenter on politics, history, culture, what he calls the new cultural revolution, which is what he calls the top-down revolution, where there's a revolution, but it's coming from above. Technological revolution, cultural revolution, which is going to see an attempt to destroy older forms of culture and introduce these new technologies and new ways of seeing the world that will not necessarily be beneficial to the people, the general people, but is according to the plan of those above and all that kind of stuff. So when he's on the higher side chats, I was like, been listening to him lately on his channel, but on the higher side chats, when he was talking about the possibility of the reasons for the change, for the great change, for the new world, if you can accept it, he included the possibility that if it is based on ET intervention, this new change that is, he paints normally as being such a negative thing, a repulsive thing, an insidious thing, a powerful squashing negative force on us from the elites, from whoever the fuck's behind the curtain running the show. The globalization of the world, breaking down borders and things like that. Saying if it's the ETs that are responsible for it, it may be because they would find us easy to deal with if we were all of one voice and one mind. Yeah, that's right. That's where he's sort of starting to, as a philosophical, speculative dude, I think every once in a while he sort of pulls out of whatever fucking carriage of dudes that he's hanging out with at the time, which I think at the moment is unfortunate, but he's still there's hope for the Dickie Dolan. Got hope for the dude. Anyway, what else have we got going on? Nah, cool. I'll just, I'll pat on my nose and I probably won't be back.